There is the potential, I believe, that Putin has unleashed forces that he will be personally unable to control. And I think that his successor, should he die before 2024, which isn't likely, but if something should go wrong, I don't think his successor could control the impulses he's released there. It is very, very hard to pull back from some of the statements he's made about the West. And I think that right now there are people questioning, is Putin gone crazy? Is he delusional? And I think that what we have to look at is that we have a Russia problem, not just a Putin problem. People say when Putin leaves, it'll all get better. I think that's a pipe dream. Russia has the longest borders in the world. It's in a terrible strategic position. It has more violent jihadists in Russia right now than any other country outside the Middle East. This is not an insignificant problem for them. They're economically on an unsound footing. There is nothing Russia can do to reverse its demographic decline. It's arithmetic at this point. That means Russia is going to be in a position where it cannot sustain its influence over its maritime and geographic borders at some time in the future. And they're now trapped, looking at NATO as a threat. They do not see having democratic nations on their borders as a good thing. They want security through instability. At the same time, there's a nuclear context to this. They've threatened Warsaw and Danish warships with nuclear strikes. We have, I live in California, San Francisco area, and there's been Russian nuclear-capable bombers as far down as along the California coast. They're up alongside Scotland, they're outside Norway, and this is not an insignificant problem. The person who threatened on their national news one night to turn America into radioactive ash was promptly promoted by Putin and put into the government's Ministry of Information. So this is where miscalculations can happen. What has happened in Crimea and the Ukraine is war. You can call it whatever you want, but it is war. They may do it in a way that makes it deniable so they don't trigger Article 5, but Putin goes to bed at night knowing he can break all the rules and the West will try to follow the rules. That is a very dangerous dichotomy in the way the world is being run. And I would just tell you that anything the West does now that seems reasonable to some degree, as we try to downplay or bring the crisis down into a lower level of boil, is now seen as really a sign of weakness on our part, I think, by Putin, who is out to break NATO apart. I think that goes without saying at this point. So the short-term danger is there could be a miscalculation. In midterm, Russia's declining influence means that the Russian Federation could actually break apart, and that's not in our best interest. You do not want to break Russia right now and have those loose nukes all over the place. There's got to be some kind of a way to walk Russia back from this precipice, and yet the West is not showing the degree of unity. The Americans appear indifferent. The Europeans are basically burying their head in the sand. What I found most interesting was the Chinese. I was told by a friend how the Chinese looked at it. You notice the Chinese have been silent about going into the Donetsk Basin and Crimea. The Chinese view was Ukraine lost Crimea, Russia lost Ukraine as a trading partner, and they needed her for both arms industry and the breadbasket. NATO and the Americans lost Russia as a partner, and there was some partnering going on over the last, 20 years or so. But here you've got a muscular China today shouldering aside smaller nations out there in the South China Sea. Basically, Russia's trying to create a sphere of influence of unstable states along its periphery, intimidated, so the state system's under attack there. China is trying to use the tribute model. They aren't going to do it the same way the Russians are doing it, but they want to have a veto authority over the economic, the diplomatic, the security situation in each of the countries around their periphery. And they've used this in the past in history. I think they're less apt to use their military the way that the Russians have. The Chinese have probably hit the end of this. I would just call it the shift from the rural areas to the cities and the low wages and all that sort of thing. Wages are going to start going up, and they need stability very, very badly in their country. This is the first generation in 200 years that's not going through trauma. whether you call it the, you know, the opium wars, the Boxer Revolution, the warlords, the Chinese World War II, the communist takeover, the Cultural Revolution. It just goes on and on and on. And I was reminded, I was with Admiral Mullen, our former chairman, this afternoon, and his counterpart, when Admiral Mullen asked him in one of their meetings, what's your biggest worry? He expected to hear, well, I need more airplanes, I need more ships, I want tanks. You know, generals are, you know, we want these things. And the guy said, no, 10 million new jobs a year to maintain internal stability. They do not need that external turmoil right now. That's why what Russia has done is scared them, I think, to some degree, as far as creating challenges for them. At the same time, they are muscular. They want to write new rules for the international game. And I think that the demographics there, too, are ugly. So there's a little bit of a time clock on them right now. But I would also add that they are doing a pretty good job of finding friction points between our allies, like between South Korea and Japan, and exaggerating those and working those. And you find them doing this all around the South China Sea periphery and out into the Pacific with some of the little island nations